Title: You Are the Ecosystem, Redefining Meaning in a High-Pressure World. Why Simply Being is the Greatest Purpose of All. About the author, Marsha Binus. Born Marsha Anita Hobbs in South Australia, she is an author, human rights activist, entrepreneur, and the creative force behind the sustainable streetwear brand, Barbed Wire Noose Clothing. Known for her unpolished, neo-grunge aesthetic and fierce advocacy for the vulnerable, Marsha is also the host of the podcast When Life Turns into a SHHT Show. When she isn't challenging societal norms or fighting for legislative reform, she can be found walking the tracks of Australia, studying, strolling the shops, talking to animals, and sharing her personal ecosystem with a black German shepherd named Lando and a fiercely observant black rabbit Django, both fur bobbies born 2024. Discover more at www.barbedwirenews.com or via www.marshiabnews.com. Dedication to everyone I love and to justice for all. For everyone who believes in the universal declaration of human rights, shall good always prevail over evil. Acknowledgements to the survivor, victim, child, adult, or other. I see you, I hear you, together we make a better world. Self-help book. You Are the Ecosystem, Redefining Meaning in a High-Pressure World. Human Rights Matter. Trademark. Fear is the root of all weakness registered. Copyright Marsha Anita Hobbs Binus. 2026. This work depicts actual events in the life of the author as truthfully as recollection permits. This is a work of nonfiction. No names have been changed, no characters invented, no events fabricated. The right of Marsha Anita Hobbs Binus to be identified as the author of this work has been asserted by the author in accordance with the Copyright Act 1968, Sect 35, Ownership of Copyright in Original Works, AUS. All rights reserved. No part of this publication may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means, electronic, mechanical, photocopying, recording, or otherwise, without the prior permission of the author and/or publishers. Any person who commits any unauthorized act in relation to this publication may be liable to criminal prosecution and civil claims for damages. You Are the Ecosystem, Redefining Meaning in a High-Pressure World. ISBN number 9781764206662. Barbed Wire Noose Registered Thai Limited, Australia. Disclaimer. Please read this disclaimer carefully before proceeding. General information only. The information provided within this publication, You Are the Ecosystem, Redefining Meaning in a High-Pressure World, is for general informational and inspirational purposes only. It represents the personal perspective and philosophical exploration of the author, Marsha Binus. The content is an exploration of finding existential purpose in shared biological reality and connection to the environment. Not medical or psychological advice. The author is not a licensed medical professional, psychologist, psychiatrist, or mental health therapist. The material contained in this book is not intended as a substitute for professional medical or mental health advice, diagnosis, treatment, or management. While this book explores the deeply felt struggles of apathy, burnout, and existential exhaustion, e.g., the difficulty of getting out of bed when feeling entirely devoid of motivation, it does not provide clinical treatments. These experiences can be symptoms of clinical depression or other serious health conditions that require professional care. You should never substitute the information in this book for advice from a qualified healthcare professional. Do not delay or disregard professional medical or psychological advice based on anything you have read in this book. If you are experiencing severe or persistent mental health struggles, thoughts of self-harm, or find yourself unable to function in daily life, please seek immediate assistance from a doctor, mental health provider, or a crisis helpline, such as Suicide and Crisis Services, Lifeline in the USA, AUS, or equivalent services in your region. Individual Interpretation and Responsibility. This book celebrates universal purpose across all human conditions, including those involving disabilities and diverse needs. It encourages connecting with the unique ecosystem of one's own life. However, The application and interpretation of these concepts are the sole responsibility of the reader. Any actions taken based on the information provided in this book are taken at your own risk. The author and publisher do not assume liability for any consequences or results that may arise from interpreting or applying the philosophical, observational, or motivational concepts discussed herein. Subjective metaphors. This book makes significant use of metaphorical language, specifically involving animals, ecology, biology, and the natural world, e.g., referencing breath as a carbon currency, interacting with flora and fauna as stewardship, and finding meaning in gritty or neo-grunge environmental realities. These are subjective perspectives designed to inspire reflection and are not presented as scientific, legal, or authoritative dictates. By proceeding with this book, you acknowledge that you have read, understood, and agree to the terms of this disclaimer. Introduction. You do not need to change the world to be worthy of standing on it. We are told from a young age that we must find our purpose, as if it is a buried treasure chest hidden somewhere in the distant future. We are taught to look for it in career milestones, in grand acts of charity, or in the legacies we leave behind. But what happens when the weight of those expectations becomes too heavy? What happens on the mornings when simply throwing off the bedsheets feels like climbing a mountain? When the well is completely dry, the demand to find your grand purpose isn't inspiring, it's paralyzing. This book is a permission slip to let go of the grand narrative. It is a reminder that there is no hierarchy of meaning. There is no big purpose and no small purpose. There is only the profound, quiet reality of your existence. You exist for a reason. Even if you spend today entirely in bed, your lungs are taking in oxygen and exhaling carbon dioxide, participating in the ancient, sacred cycle of photosynthesis. You are literally breathing life into the trees outside your window. Your purpose can be as simple as saving a tired bee on the sidewalk, filling your cat's food bowl, or stepping outside to feel the warmth of the morning. Son, it belongs to you regardless of your physical abilities, your bank account, your culture, or your creed. You do not have to earn your place here. By simply being alive, witnessing the stars, and drinking a glass of water, your purpose is already fulfilled. Chapters of this book reflecting the quiet reason of purpose. Part 1, The Weight of the Morning. Chapter 1, When the Bed is a Magnet, validating the struggle of waking up when the tank feels empty. How we lose our why in the noise of modern expectations. Chapter 2, The Myth of the Grand Calling, dismantling the toxic idea that purpose must be a career, a legacy, or a massive achievement. Why the hierarchy of big and small purpose is a lie. Part 2, The Anatomy of Micro-Purpose. Chapter 3, The Purpose of Breath. You are part of an ancient, ongoing exchange. How the simple act of exhaling carbon dioxide to feed the trees, creating oxygen through photosynthesis, means you are actively sustaining life on Earth just by breathing. Chapter 4, The Rescuers and the Nurturers, finding profound meaning in microactions. Saving a moth from a spiderweb, filling the dog's water bowl, or planting a single seed. Part 2, The Symphony of Sensation. Chapter 5, The Sacred Ordinary, realizing that enjoying a glass of cold water, feeling the sun on your skin, tasting food, and watching the stars are not just perks of life, they are the point of life. Chapter 6, Walking as a Witness, the purpose of interacting with your environment, being a gentle observer of the world around you. Part 4, Universal Belonging. Chapter 7, No Exceptions, exploring how purpose is an innate human right. Whether you are navigating a disability, facing illness, or living within any culture or creed, your existence is required by the universe. You are not a burden, you are a balancing weight. Chapter 8, Creating the Spark, practical ways to generate motivation when you feel entirely depleted. How to anchor yourself to one tiny, physical truth to pull yourself out of the dark. Part 1, The Weight of the Morning. Before a single word is spoken, before a single email is answered, the modern world demands a toll. It asks us to wake up and immediately justify our right to occupy space. For those of us living in a hyper-optimized, high-pressure society, the morning is rarely a gentle awakening. It is an immediate confrontation with the grand calling. We are conditioned to believe that if we are not springing out of bed to conquer the globe, build an empire, or leave a massive legacy, we are already failing. Part 1 of this book is an absolute, uncompromising rejection of that narrative. Here, we will look at the crushing gravity of the dawn not as a moral failing or a symptom of laziness, but as a deeply logical response to a world that asks too much. We will dismantle the toxic mythology of the go-getter and validate the profound existential exhaustion that pins you to the mattress. You do not need to change the world before breakfast. You do not need to have a massive, cinematic destiny to validate your existence. In these opening chapters, we are going to strip away the suffocating expectations of the macro world and return to the ground floor. We are going to permanently relieve you of the burden of the grand calling, giving you the permission and the freedom to simply wake up. Chapter 1. When the bed is a magnet, the gravity of dawn, it begins in the dark, usually with a sound. An alarm clock, the vibration of a phone against a bedside table, or perhaps just the shifting light of a sun you are not quite ready to see. Before your eyes even open, before your conscious mind has had a chance to fully boot up and remember what day it is, the weight hits you. It is a profound, invisible gravity. It presses down on your chest, settles into your joints, and weaves itself through the fibers of your blanket. In these moments, the bed is no longer just a piece of furniture. It is a magnet. It pulls at you with a force that feels insurmountable. The sheer act of throwing off the covers, placing your feet on the floor, and standing vertical feels less like a biological function and more like climbing a sheer cliff face without a harness. When you are in this space, society has a vocabulary ready and waiting for you. The world whispers words like lazy, unmotivated, stuck, or procrastinator. We have built an entire global culture around the glorification of the morning person. The one who springs out of bed at 5:00 a.m., runs 10 miles, drinks a green smoothie, and conquers their inbox before the sun has fully crested the horizon. But what if the magnet of your bed has nothing to do with laziness? What if the struggle to get up is not a moral failing, but a deeply logical response to a world that has fundamentally misunderstood what it means to be alive? When the tank feels empty, the bed is a sanctuary, a cocoon, and a barricade. It is the only place where nothing is required of you. Out there, beyond the bedroom door, is an ecosystem of demands. There are bills to pay, expectations to meet, relationships to navigate, and a constant, thrumming pressure to be someone of consequence. In here, beneath the duvet, you are just a breathing organism. The struggle to wake up is rarely about the physical act of moving muscles. It is an existential exhaustion. It is the crushing realization that to get up means to re-enter a high-pressure reality where you have forgotten your why. When there is no clear reason to endure the friction of the day, of course, the bed becomes a magnet. Your body and mind are engaging in a silent strike, refusing to participate in a game where the rules feel rigged and the prize feels hollow. The mythology of the go-getter. To understand why the bed pulls so strongly, we have to look at the world we are being asked to step into. We are living in an era of unprecedented noise. From the moment we are old enough to understand language, we are inundated with a very specific narrative about purpose. We are taught that human beings are essentially engines of production. Our value is measured by our output. What do you do for a living? What are your goals? Where do you see yourself in 5 years? How are you optimizing your time? Are you hustling? Are you grinding? Are you leaving a legacy? This hyper-industrialized view of human existence has created a collective neurosis. We treat ourselves like smartphones that must be constantly updated with the latest software of self-improvement, perpetually plugged into the charger of productivity. We have conflated doing with being. In this framework, purpose is a mountaintop. It is something massive, distant, and incredibly difficult to reach. It looks like a high-powered career, a world-changing invention, a massive social media following, or a perfect, curated family life. We are told that until we find this grand, macro purpose, we are just wandering aimlessly. But human beings were not designed to carry the weight of a manufactured legacy every single day. We evolved over hundreds of thousands of years in close connection with the rhythms of nature. Our ancestors did not wake up and ask themselves how they were going to disrupt the industry or maximize their brand. They woke up to build a fire, find food, share stories, and survive the winter. Their purpose was tethered to the immediate physical reality of their environment. It was grounded. It was micro. Today, we are biologically identical to those ancestors, yet we are trying to survive in a psychological environment that demands constant, extraordinary achievement. It is a profound mismatch. The modern world demands a type of energy that we simply do not possess in infinite reserves. When you wake up feeling like you cannot face the day, it is often because the day is demanding a version of you that does not exist. The high-pressure world is asking you to be a machine, and your body, in its infinite, quiet wisdom, is reminding you that you are an animal. You are part of an ecosystem, and ecosystems have seasons of dormancy. The exhaustion of the macro, let us talk about the specific exhaustion that comes from losing your why. Motivation is a delicate chemistry. It requires a spark, a belief that the effort you are about to expend will yield a meaningful result. When we believe that purpose must be massive and world-altering, we inadvertently rob ourselves of the motivation to do the small, necessary things. If your subconscious believes that the only valid reason to get out of bed is to conquer the world, build an empire, or fulfill a grand destiny, a regular Tuesday morning is going to feel suffocatingly pointless. Why brush your teeth, make coffee, and commute to a normal job if it isn't leading to a spectacular, cinematic triumph? Why fold the laundry if it doesn't change the course of human history? This is the paralysis of the macro purpose. By raising the stakes of our existence so unimaginably high, we make the ordinary act of living feel like a failure. For many, this loss of the why is compounded by the very real challenges of human life. You might be navigating a chronic illness, a disability, a period of deep grief, or the relentless grind of poverty. When you are surviving these realities, society's obsession with hustle is not just unhelpful, it is actively cruel. If your body is fighting a flare-up of an autoimmune disease, getting out of bed isn't just mentally taxing, it is a physical battle. If you are navigating a neurodivergent brain in a world built for neurotypicals, the sensory and executive function demands of a standard morning can drain your battery before you even reach the front door. In these situations, the mainstream self-help industry often offers platitudes. Mind over matter. Just push through. You have the same 24 hours as Beyoncé. These messages are toxic because they ignore the fundamental truth of the human ecosystem. We do not all start from the same baseline. Our capacities fluctuate. Our energy reserves are not equal. When we judge ourselves against a fictional standard of relentless productivity, the bed becomes a magnet not out of laziness, but out of shame. We hide under the covers because it is safer than facing a world that tells us our best isn't good enough. The bed as a barometer, not a prison. To begin dismantling this heavy, exhausting narrative, we must first change how we view the struggle itself. We need to stop looking at the reluctance to get out of bed as an enemy to be defeated and start viewing it as a barometer to be read. Think of a forest in late autumn. The leaves fall, the sap stops flowing, and the trees enter a state of dormancy. The forest is not lazy. It is not failing at being a forest. It is conserving its energy to survive the bitter cold, trusting that the spring will come again. When you find yourself pinned to the mattress, staring at the ceiling and feeling utterly devoid of motivation, your internal ecosystem is signaling a winter. The noise of the high-pressure world has depleted your soil. You are experiencing an energy drought. Instead of attacking yourself with guilt, what if you approached this feeling with fierce, radical compassion? What if you whispered to yourself, "Of course I am tired. The world is incredibly loud, the demands are impossibly high, and I am running on fumes." Validation is the first step out of the dark. The moment you stop fighting the reality of your exhaustion, the gravity of the morning begins to loosen its grip. You stop wasting your precious, limited energy on self-loathing. There is no moral virtue in pushing yourself until you break. Being exhausted is not a sin, and needing rest is not a crime. Whether you are tired from overwork, from managing a disability, from the emotional labor of navigating a complex culture, or simply from the sheer, existential weight of being alive in the 21st century, your exhaustion is valid. The illusion of the blank slate, part of the terror of the morning, is the feeling of the blank slate. Every day presents itself as a stretch of time that you must fill with meaning, activity, and purpose. It is like being handed a blank canvas every single morning and being ordered to paint a masterpiece before sunset. When you have nothing left in the tank, the blank canvas is terrifying. You don't have the paint. You don't have the brushes. You don't even have the vision. But what if the canvas isn't blank? This is the central shift we are going to explore. The high-pressure world tells you that purpose is something you create through action. If you don't do anything, you are nothing. But an ecological view of human existence reveals a vastly different truth. Purpose is not something you build from scratch every day. Purpose is something you are already actively participating in, simply by having a pulse. You do not wake up to a blank canvas. You wake up already embedded in a masterpiece. As you lie in bed, feeling the weight of the blankets, your heart is beating rhythmically, pumping oxygenated blood to every extremity. Your lungs are expanding and contracting. As you exhale, you are releasing carbon dioxide into the air, a vital, non-negotiable ingredient that the trees and plants outside your window require to survive. You are already in conversation with the atmosphere. You are already an integral part of the carbon cycle. Before your feet have even touched the floor, you are sustaining the biosphere. This is not a poetic metaphor. It is a biological, empirical fact. The ecosystem does not care about your job title, your bank account, your cultural background, or your physical abilities. It does not care if your legs work perfectly or if you require a wheelchair. It does not care if you are neurotypical or neurodivergent. The ecosystem simply requires your presence. It requires your breath. Reclaiming the morning, how do we take this profound truth and use it to break the magnetic pull of the bed? We do it by radically shrinking our focus. When the macro demands of the world are too heavy, we must retreat to the micro-realities of our physical existence. We must let go of the need to have a good day, a productive day, or a meaningful day as defined by a broken society. When the bed is a magnet, your only job is to anchor yourself to one tiny, undeniable truth. You do not have to get out of bed to conquer the world. You do not have to get out of bed to find your grand destiny. You only have to get out of bed to get a glass of water. Water is life. It is the ancient, primal liquid that makes up the majority of your body and covers the majority of our planet. When you swing your legs over the side of the bed and walk to the kitchen to pour a glass of cold water, you are engaging in an act of deep, fundamental purpose. You are hydrating the organism. You are participating in the water cycle. You are doing exactly what every living creature on Earth has done since the dawn of time. You are drinking water, and that is enough. If the tank is empty, let that be the entirety of your purpose for the morning. Do not look ahead to the emails, the errands, or the societal expectations. Focus entirely on the physical sensation of the water hitting the back of your throat. Feel the cool glass in your hand. Next, perhaps your purpose is simply to open a window, to let the sunlight touch your skin for 60 seconds. The sun, a star millions of miles away, is casting photons across the vacuum of space, and those photons are landing on your cheek, interacting with your biology to create vitamin D. It is a cosmic interaction. It is miraculous, and it requires absolutely no hustle on your part. You just have to stand there and receive it. You are the ecosystem. Your purpose is woven into the very fabric of the physical world. You do not have to earn it, and you certainly cannot lose it just because you are having a low-energy day. When we redefine meaning this way, the morning loses its terror. The bed stops being a magnet of shame and returns to being exactly what it is, a place of rest. You can leave it without fear because you are not stepping out into a high-pressure arena where you must prove your worth. You are simply stepping out into your natural habitat. The world does not need you to be a machine. It does not need you to be a titan of industry. It simply needs you to be here, to breathe, to hydrate, to witness the light. As we move forward into the next chapter, we are going to completely dismantle the myth of the grand calling. We are going to permanently relieve you of the burden of changing the world so that you can finally have the freedom to simply live in it. But for now, as you sit with this first chapter, take a deep breath. Exhale. You just fed a tree. Your day is already a success. Stay exactly where you are. Stop fighting the gravity for 60 seconds. Acknowledge your deep exhaustion without apologizing for it, and remind yourself that the ecosystem has seasons of dormancy too. Chapter 2. The myth of the grand calling, the weight of the bookstore aisle. If you want to understand the modern crisis of meaning, walk into any bookstore and stand in the self-help and business aisles. Look at the titles screaming at you from the spines. They command you to find your passion, discover your destiny, leave a legacy, and change the world. They feature silhouettes of people standing triumphantly on mountain peaks, or sleek typography promising that the secret to a fulfilling life is just one massive paradigm shift away. Standing in that aisle, it is easy to feel a sinking sensation in your stomach. It is a very specific type of existential dread. It is the feeling that everyone else was handed a map at birth, complete with a bright red X marking their ultimate, glorious destination, while you were left wandering in the woods without a compass. We have been sold a story about purpose, and it is a story that is actively making us miserable. This story is the myth of the grand calling. It is the pervasive, toxic idea that your life's purpose must be a spectacular, headline-generating achievement. It dictates that unless you are curing a rare disease, building a billion-dollar company, writing a best-selling novel, or leading a massive social movement, you are simply taking up space. It transforms the beautiful, chaotic, and quiet experience of human life into a high-stakes audition for a role you never actually asked to play. When we internalize this myth, the baseline of a good life becomes impossibly high. The ordinary becomes synonymous with the inadequate. And when the ordinary becomes inadequate, the simple act of waking up, doing your best, and going to sleep feels like a failure. It is time to dismantle this myth. We need to tear it down, brick by heavy brick, because the grand calling is not a fundamental truth of the universe. It is a man-made invention, a psychological trap that keeps us endlessly striving, endlessly exhausted, and entirely disconnected from the profound meaning that already exists in our quietest moments. The invention of the calling to free ourselves from this narrative, we first must understand where it came from. The universe did not write the rules of the grand calling. Human society did, and it did so relatively recently. For the vast majority of human history, purpose was deeply communal and entirely grounded in the present tense. If you lived in an agrarian village 500 years ago, your purpose was not a mystery you had to discover through intense soul-searching. Your purpose was the harvest. Your purpose was tending to the livestock, repairing the roof before the winter snows, raising your children, and contributing to the survival of your immediate community. Purpose was physical, tangible, and shared. There was no anxiety about leaving a legacy because survival itself was legacy enough. However, as society industrialized and entered the modern era of hypercapitalism, the definition of purpose underwent a radical, devastating mutation. We began to equate human value with economic output and public recognition. We took the beautiful, abstract concept of meaning and forced it into the rigid mold of a career trajectory. We started asking children, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" instead of "How do you want to live?" By doing this, we turned purpose into a noun, a job title, a tax bracket, a specific, marketable identity. This modern iteration of the calling is essentially a marketing campaign. It benefits an economic system that thrives on perpetual dissatisfaction. If you believe your true purpose is always just over the horizon, always requiring more hustle, more education, or more achievement, you will keep running on the treadmill. You will keep buying the books, attending the seminars, and pouring your precious energy into a system that promises fulfillment but only delivers burnout. The grand calling relies on the illusion that you are currently incomplete. It whispers that right now, as you sit in your living room, drinking tea and watching the rain, you are not enough. It tells you that your current state of being is merely a waiting room for your real life to begin. This is the lie. Your life is not a waiting room. The tea, the rain, the beating of your heart, that is the main event. The hierarchy of illusion, one of the most damaging components of the grand calling, is the hierarchy it creates. Society loves to rank human endeavors, placing them on a ladder of perceived importance. At the top of this imaginary ladder are the macro purposes. These are the world leaders, the visionary inventors, the famous artists, and the renowned humanitarians. In the middle are the standard purposes. These are the successful professionals, the community leaders, the parents raising achieving children. And at the bottom of this ladder, often entirely invisible, are the micro purposes. These are the folks working minimum wage jobs just to survive, the individuals battling severe depression, the people navigating chronic illness, or those who simply desire a quiet, unremarkable life. According to the grand calling narrative, the people at the top are rich in purpose, while the people at the bottom are destitute. But this hierarchy is an absolute illusion. It is a fiction born of human ego. If we look beyond the artificial constructs of human society and observe the universe itself, we see that nature has no concept of a hierarchy of meaning. The universe does not deal in big and small. It only deals in the intricate, interconnected web of existence. Consider a massive, ancient redwood tree. It is a towering giant, hundreds of feet tall, living for thousands of years. In human terms, the redwood is a macro purpose. It is a monument. It leaves a legacy. But beneath the soil, wrapped around the roots of that giant redwood, is a microscopic network of mycorrhizal fungi. These fungi are entirely invisible to the naked eye. They live in the dark. They have no grandeur. Yet without that tiny, invisible fungi breaking down nutrients in the soil and trading them with the tree's roots, the giant redwood would starve and fall. The macro cannot exist without the micro. So, which has the greater purpose? The towering tree that touches the sky, or the microscopic fungus that keeps it alive? The question itself is flawed. In an ecosystem, scale is irrelevant. Value is not determined by size, visibility, or longevity. Value is intrinsic to existence. The redwood and the fungus are equal participants in the symphony of the forest. There is no big or small purpose. There is only the role you are currently playing in the ecosystem of life. When you internalize this biological truth, the hierarchy of the grand calling shatters. You realize that planting a tree in your backyard is not a lesser purpose than negotiating a global climate treaty. Saving a moth that is trapped in your bathroom is not a smaller victory than running a massive animal sanctuary. Both actions are expressions of life nurturing life. Both are necessary. Both are profound. The cruelty of impact, the demand that our lives must have a massive impact, is not just exhausting for the average person. It is actively cruel to anyone whose reality does not align with relentless, upward mobility. Let us speak directly to the realities of culture, creed, disability, and need. If you are living with a chronic illness, your daily reality might involve carefully managing your energy just to take a shower, eat a meal, and endure physical pain. If you are deeply neurodivergent, your energy might be entirely consumed by navigating a sensory environment that feels like a war zone. If you are surviving systemic poverty, your cognitive load is monopolized by the immediate, crushing mathematics of paying for rent and groceries. When the world tells a disabled person, an exhausted person, or a marginalized person that true purpose is found in changing the world or maximizing your potential, it is delivering a message of exclusion. It implies that because they are not participating in the high-stakes arena of societal impact, their lives are somehow devoid of ultimate meaning. This is a moral failure of our modern philosophy. Your life has purpose regardless of your physical or cognitive abilities. Your existence is required by the universe entirely independent of your economic output. You do not have to prove your worth through productivity. You do not have to justify your oxygen consumption by being an inspiration to others or overcoming massive adversity in a way that makes for a good movie script. If your body requires you to spend 6 days a week in bed resting, those 6 days are not a waste of time. You are honoring the ecosystem of your physical form. You are practicing the quiet, radical purpose of endurance. Purpose is an innate human right. It is not a VIP club that you have to hustle your way into. It is the air you breathe. It is the ground you walk on. It is an unshakable, indestructible fact of your biology. No matter what culture you are from, no matter what your creed is, no matter what physical or emotional needs dictate your daily routine, your presence here is a completed equation. You are enough, exactly as you are, in the exact physical condition you are in today. The freedom of being ordinary when we finally let go of the grand calling, something incredible happens. The crushing anxiety of the blank slate morning dissipates, and it is replaced by an overwhelming sense of freedom. There is profound relief in accepting that you are entirely ordinary. Ordinary has been weaponized as an insult in our high-pressure world, but we must reclaim it. To be ordinary is to be part of the natural order. It is to be like the water, the grass, the passing clouds, and the dirt. It is to be essential, unpretentious, and deeply grounded. When you release the need to have a massive destiny, you are suddenly free to actually enjoy the life that is happening right in front of you. You stop looking at the horizon and start looking at your hands. Without the burden of the grand calling, the micro-purposes of daily life are allowed to shine in their true, radiant colors. You realize that you don't need to write a symphony to experience the purpose of music. You just need to close your eyes and listen to a song that makes your chest ache in a good way. You don't need to be a Michelin star chef to experience the purpose of nourishment. You just need to savor the crunch of an apple. The pressure to find your purpose is a wild goose chase that takes you away from yourself. You cannot find it because you never lost it. You are it. The ecosystem does not judge. Imagine standing in a vast, untouched wilderness. Imagine looking at a river winding through a valley. Does the river worry that it is not flowing fast enough? Does it feel inadequate because it is not an ocean? Does the grass feel shame because it is not as tall as the mountains? Of course not. Nature does not engage in self-flagellation. Everything simply is what it is, doing what it does, and the accumulation of all that quiet being creates the majesty of the wild. You are not separate from that wilderness. You are a biological organism living on a rock spinning through space. You are made of the exact same stardust, water, and carbon as the river, the grass, and the mountains. The ecosystem does not judge your output. The ecosystem does not read your resume. It does not care if you got a promotion, and it does not care if you spent the entire weekend staring blankly at the wall. It only knows that you are here. When you breathe out, you provide carbon dioxide. When you breathe in, you take the oxygen gifted to you by the flora. When you walk, your footsteps shift the soil. When you interact with an animal, feeding a pet, rescuing a spider, or simply watching a bird fly past, you are engaging in cross-species fellowship. These are not trivial things. These are the fundamental mechanics of reality. If we can strip away the noise, the capitalism, the ego, and the relentless demand for more, we are left with a very quiet, very beautiful truth. You exist. For a reason, and that reason is simply to exist. The grand calling was a ghost story we told ourselves to feel important, but the reality of our simple, breathing existence is far more miraculous than any legacy we could ever hope to build. As we strip away the macro, we must turn our gaze inward to the micro. We must look at the mechanics of our own bodies and the immediate space around us. In the next chapter, we will look at the most basic, continuous act of human existence and discover how the simple rhythm of your chest rising and falling is the ultimate proof that you are actively keeping the world alive. Look at your hands. Remind yourself that they do not need to build an empire today, and they do not need to change the world. They only need to carry you through the next hour. You are allowed to be wonderfully, perfectly ordinary. Part 2. The anatomy of micro-purpose when you finally let go of the need to be a macro savior. A terrifying but beautiful space opens up. If you are not here to single-handedly rescue the globe or build a monument to your own productivity, then what exactly are you supposed to do? The answer lies not in the mind, but in the gritty, unpolished mechanics of your own biology and the immediate radius of your physical reach. Part 2 is an exploration of the true, functioning ecosystem of your daily life. It is the realization that purpose is not something you have to desperately search for. It is something you are already doing. In these chapters, we will explore the quiet, colossal victories of existence. We will look at the profound biological trade agreement you execute with the earth every single time your chest rises and falls. We will celebrate the sacred chores, the filling of the water bowl, the scattering of the seeds, the rescuing of the exhausted bee on the sidewalk. This section is a testament to the nurturers and the stewards. It is the definitive proof that you are actively keeping the world alive, not through grand, sweeping gestures, but through the vital, localized rhythm of your breath and your hands. Chapter 3. The purpose of breath, the autonomic rebellion. If you have ever experienced a period of profound darkness, a time when the weight of the world felt so absolute that you wished you could simply turn yourself off like a lamp, you have likely encountered the stubborn, relentless rebellion of your own biology. When your conscious mind is exhausted, when it has decided that the high-pressure game is no longer worth playing, and the bed is the only safe harbor left, a fascinating struggle occurs. Your mind might say, I am done. I have no purpose. I give up. But your brainstem, the ancient primal root of your nervous system, flatly refuses to listen. Without your conscious permission, without requiring you to set a goal, make a plan, or find a single ounce of motivation, your diaphragm drops. A vacuum is created in your chest cavity. Air rushes in through your nose and mouth, filling the millions of tiny air sacs in your lungs. Oxygen passes through the membranes into your bloodstream, carried by hemoglobin to every cell in your body. And then the muscles relax and you exhale. In, out, you breathe around 20,000 times a day. You do it while you are asleep. You do it while you are scrolling mindlessly on your phone. You do it while you are crying, while you are laughing, and while you are staring blankly at the ceiling, convinced you are contributing nothing to the world. This autonomic rhythm is not just a biological mechanism. It is a profound philosophical statement. Your body, in its ancient wisdom, believes unequivocally that your continued existence is necessary. It does not ask for your resume to justify the intake of oxygen. It does not require you to be in a good mood. Even when you are entirely depleted, your physical form is silently, fiercely advocating for your life. We often treat our breath as background noise, something we only notice when we are out of it, perhaps after a heavy run, a sudden fright, or a panic attack. But to redefine your purpose in a high-pressure world, you must completely reframe your relationship with your breath. It is not merely the fuel that keeps your engine running so you can go back to the capitalist grind. It is your most direct, continuous, and undeniable interaction with the living world. To breathe is to participate. And in the ecosystem of Earth, participation is the only purpose that matters. The carbon currency. To truly understand the magnitude of what happens when you exhale, we have to look past the boundaries of our own skin and look at the trees outside our windows, the grass pushing up through the concrete, and the vast, silent forests that blanket the continents. From a purely human-centric biological perspective, we are taught that oxygen is the good gas and carbon dioxide is the waste product. We view our exhale as the body throwing out the trash. In the modern era, the very word carbon has become synonymous with pollution, climate crisis, and human destruction. We have conflated the toxic, industrial emissions of factories and fossil fuels with the natural, biological output of our own lungs. But the natural world does not view your breath as pollution. To the flora of this planet, your exhale is the nectar of the gods. Consider the chemistry of photosynthesis. It is arguably the most important biological process on Earth, the magical alchemy that transforms sunlight into the physical matter that sustains all food webs. For a plant to grow, for a tree to build its trunk, for a leaf to uncurl in the spring, it requires 3 specific ingredients: water from the soil, photons from the sun, and carbon dioxide from the air. When a leaf opens its stomata, the microscopic pores on its surface, it breathes in the carbon dioxide that surrounds it. The plant uses the energy of the sun to split that carbon dioxide molecule apart. It keeps the carbon, using it as the physical building block to create sugars, wood, stems, and roots. And what does the plant do with the leftover oxygen? It exhales it back into the atmosphere, perfectly packaged for you to breathe in again. Do not skim past this reality. Sit with the physical truth of it. The physical mass of a towering eucalyptus tree, its hard wood, its fragrant leaves baking in the dry heat, its deep roots. That mass did not come from the dirt. Trees are not made of soil. Trees are made of air. They are built out of the carbon dioxide they pull from the atmosphere. When you lie in your bed, feeling entirely useless, you are exhaling the exact molecular currency that the trees require to build their bodies. Your waste is their foundation. You are feeding them. You are actively, continuously participating in an ancient trade agreement. This is the ultimate proof that you are not a burden on the earth, but a necessary component of its machinery. The ecosystem does not just tolerate your presence, it requires your exhalations. If every oxygen-breathing creature were to suddenly vanish, the plants would eventually suffocate in a stagnant atmosphere devoid of carbon dioxide. You are providing the raw material for the forests. You are giving the grass the tools it needs to turn green. You are breathing life into the ecosystem just as surely as it is breathing life into you. How can anyone tell you that your life lacks purpose when your very breath is the architecture of the natural world? The shared rhythm of the wild. Once you recognize this invisible, atmospheric thread connecting you to the flora, you begin to see your connection to the rest of the fauna. You realize that you are sharing this exact same rhythmic exchange with every other creature on the planet. Look closely at the animals around you. Watch a black German shepherd sleeping quietly on the floor. Look at the steady, rhythmic rise and fall of its ribs. Watch a black rabbit resting in the shade, its sides moving with a rapid, gentle cadence. Animals do not suffer from existential dread. A dog does not wake up and worry that it isn't optimizing its day or leaving a sufficient legacy. A rabbit does not feel inadequate because it hasn't achieved the grand calling. They simply exist. They eat, they sleep, they play, they seek comfort, and they breathe. They are perfectly content to simply be part of the environment, totally unburdened by the human neurosis of proving their worth. When you look at that sleeping dog, you do not judge it for its lack of productivity. You do not demand that it justify its existence by changing the world. You look at it and you understand intuitively that its life has value simply because it is alive. Its presence in the room is enough. Why, then, do we refuse to grant ourselves that same grace? Why do we demand that our human lives be infinitely more complicated, infinitely more exhausting, and infinitely more impactful than the lives of the creatures we share our homes with? We are animals. We are highly complex, deeply emotional, tool-making animals, but we are animals nonetheless. When you feel overwhelmed by the demands of the high-pressure world, it can be incredibly grounding to sync your awareness with the animals around you. When you sit quietly in a room with a sleeping dog, you are sharing the exact same air. You are both inhaling the oxygen gifted by the trees, and you are both exhaling the carbon the trees will use tomorrow. In that moment, stripped of language, stripped of societal expectations, stripped of bank accounts and job titles, you are entirely equal. You are two vital organisms participating in the respiration of the earth. There is a profound, gritty reality to this connection. It isn't a polished, sanitized version of life. It is the raw, inescapable truth of our biology. Whether you are out in the elements, feeling the wind whip past you, the dust in the air, the sheer, rugged force of nature, or holed up in a quiet room, you are displacing air. You are taking up space, and that space is rightfully yours. Reclaiming the breath from the productivity industry, it is necessary to take a moment to address how the concept of breathing has been hijacked by the very high-pressure culture we are trying to escape. In recent years, mindfulness and breathwork have become incredibly trendy. Corporations offer meditation seminars to their employees. Apps remind you to take deep breaths. We are sold a pristine, sanitized version of breathing exercises, often packaged with images of incredibly fit people sitting in perfect lotus positions on pristine beaches. But if you look closely at how this mindfulness is often marketed, you will notice an insidious subtext. Breathe deeply so you can be more productive. Meditate so you can reduce your stress, which will allow you to work harder and achieve more. Optimize your oxygen intake so you can conquer your to-do list. This is a profound corruption of the sacred act of breathing. It takes the ultimate equalizer, the very air we share, and turns it into just another tool for the grand calling. It turns rest into a strategy for better labor. We must aggressively reclaim our breath from this productivity mindset. When you focus on your breath to ground yourself, do not do it so you can get back to work. Do it to remember that you are the work. Do it to rebel against the idea that you are a machine. Your breath is not always going to be a serene, perfectly timed yogic exercise. Sometimes your breath is a ragged gasp after a hard, heavy cry. Sometimes it is a furious, heated exhale through gritted teeth when the injustice of the world feels too heavy to bear. Sometimes it is a long, shuddering sigh released into a pillow when the bed feels like a magnet. All of these breaths are valid. They are the honest, unpolished sounds of a human being navigating a difficult ecosystem. The universe does not require your breath to be peaceful. It only requires it to be present. When you are trapped in a state of exhaustion and you feel the shame creeping in because you haven't achieved anything today, I want you to reject the corporate mindfulness techniques. Instead, try an ecological breathing practice. Lie exactly where you are. Do not try to sit up perfectly straight. Do not try to clear your mind of all thoughts. That is nearly impossible anyway. Just draw a breath in through your nose. Feel the physical expansion of your ribcage. Notice the slight drop in temperature at the back of your throat as the air rushes in. Hold it for just a fraction of a second, acknowledging that your body is currently pulling life-sustaining molecules out of the invisible ether. And then, exhale. As you push the air out, visualize it leaving your room. Visualize it drifting out the window, mixing with the wind, and rolling across the landscape. Imagine it carrying across the dry, rugged earth, brushing past the scrub, and meeting the leaves of a tree. Imagine the stomata of that leaf opening up to receive exactly what you just offered. You are not doing this to calm down so you can answer emails. You are doing this to radically assert your place in the biological order of the world. You are breathing to remind yourself that you are a provider of life, simply by existing. The end of the vacuum the high-pressure world creates a sense of profound emptiness. When we measure our worth by our external achievements, and we fall short of those impossible standards, we feel like we are living in a vacuum. We feel like we are void of meaning, void of purpose, void of value. But physics tells us that nature abhors a vacuum, and biology tells us that you are entirely full. You are full of blood, bone, memory, and instinct. You are full of the oxygen that was manufactured by the forests of the earth, and you are full of the carbon that will build the forests of tomorrow. You are a localized, breathing, thinking intersection of the entire universe's history. There is no such thing as an empty life. If you are alive to read these words, you are currently executing your purpose with flawless precision. Every single time your chest rises, you are succeeding at the only job the earth ever actually assigned to you. You are keeping the rhythm of the biosphere pulsing. When we strip away the noise of culture, the demands of capitalism, the judgments of society, and the fictional hierarchy of the grand calling, we are left with the undeniable, miraculous fact of our own respiration. It is the great equalizer. No amount of money can buy a better breath, and no amount of poverty or disability can diminish the biological value of the carbon you exhale. The next time you find yourself entirely paralyzed by the weight of the morning, when the bed refuses to let you go, and the voice in your head tells you that you are nothing but a disappointment, I want you to remember the trees. I want you to remember the sleeping animals. I want you to remember the rugged, unyielding machinery of the natural world. Your mind may be tired, but your lungs are wide awake. They are doing the sacred work. They are participating in the grand, ancient exchange. You do not need to leap out of bed to find your purpose. You do not need to change the world today. The world is perfectly happy with you just lying there, keeping it company and feeding it your breath. As we move forward into the next chapter, we will begin to look at the other small, physical ways we interact with the world around us. We will explore how the micro actions we take, the quiet gestures of rescuing, nurturing, and simply observing, are not trivial distractions but profound expressions of our place in the ecosystem. We will look at the bugs we save and the water bowls we fill. But for now, simply close your eyes. Take a deep, deliberate breath in. Hold it. Now let it go. Give it to the earth. You are doing perfectly. You are enough. Take one deep breath in through your nose. Hold it for a fraction of a second. Exhale slowly. You just fed a tree. Your day is already a biological success. Chapter 4. The rescuers and the nurturers, the paralysis of the macro savior. In the previous chapter, we established the fundamental, biological baseline of your worth, your breath. We anchored your purpose to the autonomic rhythm of your own chest, proving that your mere existence sustains the biosphere. But as the fog of exhaustion begins to lift, and the simple act of breathing feels less like a burden and more like a quiet victory, a new challenge often arises. You open your eyes, you recognize your place in the ecosystem, and then you look at the news. We live in an era of unprecedented global awareness, and with that awareness comes an agonizing volume of empathetic data. Through the glowing screens in our hands, we bear witness to the macro suffering of the world. We see systemic injustice, environmental degradation, legislative failures, and human rights crises unfolding thousands of miles away. For anyone with a compassionate heart, this influx of information triggers a desperate, overwhelming urge to fix it. We are conditioned to believe that true purpose, especially for those of us who care deeply about justice and the welfare of the vulnerable, must look like large-scale rescue. We convince ourselves that to be a nurturer, we must be drafting legislation, leading massive reform movements, or standing on the front lines of global conflicts. We believe that advocacy only counts if it is broadcasted, scaled, and capable of shifting paradigms. But carrying the weight of global suffering is a surefire recipe for paralysis. When you demand that your daily actions must somehow offset the grand tragedies of the modern world, the sheer mathematical impossibility of the task will crush you. You cannot personally save the rainforest before breakfast. You cannot single-handedly rewrite the Bill of Rights on a Tuesday afternoon. When the macro-savior complex takes hold, it tells you that because you cannot save everyone, your efforts to save anyone are futile. It breeds a profound, cynical burnout. It sends you right back under the covers, defeated by the scale of a broken world. To break this paralysis, we must apply the same ecological lens to our actions that we apply to our breath. In an ecosystem, Survival does not depend on a single, omnipotent savior. It depends on billions of micro-interactions. It depends on localized, hyper-specific acts of nurturing. True advocacy, the kind that anchors a life and provides deep, sustaining purpose, does not require a global stage. It requires a willingness to look down at the ground immediately in front of you, the sacred chore. Let us return to the morning. You have acknowledged your breath, and you have recognized that you are not a blank slate. Now you swing your legs over the edge of the bed. You are ready to interact with the world outside of your own biology. What is the first thing you do? For many, the first action of the day is not an act of self-interest, but an act of stewardship. It is the heavy, comforting presence of a black German shepherd resting his massive head on the edge of the mattress, his dark eyes waiting patiently for you to stir. It is the soft, rhythmic rustling coming from the corner of the room, where a black rabbit sits in quiet, observant stillness, entirely dependent on your routine for its survival. When you stand up and walk to the kitchen to retrieve the kibble, the fresh hay, or the cold tap water, you are engaging in one of the most ancient and profound expressions of purpose, the sacred chore. In the high-pressure world, feeding a pet is often dismissed as a mundane task, a minor bullet point on a never-ending to-do list. But let us look at it through the lens of the ecosystem. To that German shepherd, you are not just a roommate, you are the provider of the harvest. You are the architect of his safety. When you wash out a metal bowl and fill it with fresh, clean water, you are not performing a chore. You are sustaining a life. You are delivering the most vital element on earth to a creature that relies on you completely. To that quiet, velvet-eared rabbit, your hands bringing food represent the absolute certainty of care in a chaotic universe. There is a pure, unfiltered honesty in this relationship. Animals do not care about your resume, your diploma, your bank account, or the clothes you wear. They do not judge you for your past mistakes, and they do not demand that you optimize your productivity. They demand only your presence and your stewardship. When you fill that water bowl, you are effectively playing the role of a localized deity. You are intervening in the mechanics of reality to ensure the survival of another living thing. That is not a small purpose. That is a colossal, earth-shattering reality for the animal looking up at you. If you achieve nothing else in a given day, if the emails go unanswered, if the grand projects are stalled, if the world at large remains completely unchanged by your existence, the fact that a dog drank clean water and a rabbit ate a fresh meal because you provided it is an unassailable victory. You nurtured life. The day is already justified. The empathy of the colossus, this micro-stewardship, extends far beyond the animals we invite into our homes. It spills out into the wild, unpolished world around us, inviting us to participate in momentary acts of salvation that the rest of society completely ignores. Imagine you are walking down a concrete sidewalk, the noise of the city blaring around you. You look down, and there, struggling against the harsh, synthetic terrain, is a single, exhausted bee. It is moving sluggishly, its energy reserves depleted, slowly dying on the pavement. The high-pressure world walks right past the bee. The high-pressure world says, I have a meeting to get to. I have an empire to build. A single insect is statistically insignificant, but the nurturer stops. The rescuer pauses. You kneel down. You find a leaf, or perhaps you mix a single drop of sugar water if you have it. You gently coax the tiny, fragile creature onto a safer surface. You move it to a patch of grass or the petal of a nearby flower. You wait a moment, watching as it slowly drinks, as its wings begin to vibrate with renewed energy, and finally as it takes flight back into the air. Why do we do this? What is the point of saving a single bug? It carries no economic value. It will not earn you an award. It will not be written into the history books. By all the metrics of the grand calling, it is a completely meaningless expenditure of time and energy. But in the economy of the ecosystem, it is an act of radical, breathtaking grace. When you stop to rescue an insect from a spider web, or carry a stray earthworm off the hot asphalt after a rainstorm, you are exercising the purest form of empathy. You are a colossal giant, a towering mountain of flesh and bone, pausing your massive, complicated life to alter the destiny of a creature so small it could fit on your thumbnail. You are recognizing the inherent value of a life that cannot offer you anything in return. In doing so, you push back against the toxic narrative that value is determined by scale. You declare that suffering is suffering, no matter how small the lungs that are struggling to breathe. If your life's purpose in that exact 60-second window was simply to ensure that a bee lived to see another flower, then your purpose was flawlessly executed. You were an intervening force of mercy. These micro-rescues accumulate. They weave a subtle, invisible tapestry of care throughout your environment. You begin to walk through the world not as a consumer, rushing to extract value from your surroundings, but as a guardian. The sidewalk is no longer just a path to your office. It is a patrol route. The garden is no longer just landscaping. It is a sanctuary. The grit and the dirt purpose is not always found in soft, sterile environments. Often, it requires us to abandon the clean, curated aesthetics of modern living and get our hands aggressively dirty. If we are the ecosystem, we must interact with the raw materials of it. We must embrace the grit. Think of the rugged, unpolished reality of the outdoors. Think of the wide-open spaces of a farm, the dust kicked up on a dirt track, the harsh, visceral elements of nature that refuse to be tamed. There is a deep, primal satisfaction in connecting with this raw earth, a satisfaction that predates concrete and computer screens. When you take a seed, dig a hole in the soil, and bury it, you are participating in a gritty, messy act of faith. Planting a tree or a vegetable garden is not a delicate operation. It requires digging into the dark, damp earth. It requires feeling the coarse texture of the soil under your fingernails. It requires water, sweat, and patience. It is an acknowledgement that growth is often a gritty, unseen process that happens in the dark before it ever reaches the light. When you plant that seed, you are physically tethering yourself to the future of the environment. You are creating a biological contract. You are saying, I will provide the soil and the water, and you will do the miraculous work of growing. In a society obsessed with instant gratification, where we expect everything from our entertainment to our food to be delivered in seconds, the act of planting something is an act of profound rebellion. A seed does not care about your deadlines. A sapling will not grow faster just because you are anxious for it to become a tree. It forces you to submit to the natural, unhurried rhythm of the earth. And as that plant grows, your purpose grows with it. You become a participant in its survival. Every time you water it, every time you prune a dead leaf, you are actively nurturing the environment. You do not need to own a massive agricultural empire to claim this purpose. A single, thriving potted plant on a cramped apartment balcony is a functioning ecosystem, and you are its sun and its rain. The antidote to insignificance, the high-pressure world thrives on making you feel insignificant. It profits off your insecurity. If you feel small and purposeless, you will buy more things, consume more media, and work longer hours in a desperate attempt to fill the void. But when you embrace your role as a micro-nurturer, that sense of insignificance evaporates. How can you be insignificant when a black rabbit relies on you for its safety? How can you be meaningless when a German shepherd looks at you as the center of its entire universe? How can you be purposeless when a patch of dirt in your yard is blooming because your hands tended to it, or when a bee is flying because you chose to stop and save it? The concept of leaving a legacy is usually framed as something monumental, a building with your name on it, a massive inheritance, a world-changing invention. But the truest, most enduring legacies are biological and emotional. Your legacy is the carbon dioxide you exhaled that fed the oak tree down the street. Your legacy is the dog that lived a long, comfortable, deeply loved life because you chose to take on the daily, sacred chores of its care. Your legacy is the tiny, microscopic ripple effects of kindness you extended to the insects, the birds, and the soil. You do not need to change the whole world to be a rescuer. You only need to change the world for one specific organism in one specific moment. If you are navigating life with a disability, a chronic illness, or an overwhelming mental health struggle, society may cruelly imply that your capacity for impact is limited. But the water bowl does not require you to be perfectly healthy. The dying moth in the windowpane does not require you to have boundless energy. The potted plant on your windowsill does not require you to be neurotypical or wealthy. The micro-actions of nurturing are universally accessible. They are the great equalizer of purpose. They prove that no matter your culture, your creed, or your physical limitations, you possess the immense, magical ability to foster life. The rebellion of care ultimately, to be a nurturer in a world that values endless extraction, is an act of profound defiance. We live in a culture that treats the environment, animals, and even other humans as resources to be exploited. The prevailing narrative is to take as much as you can, as fast as you can, and leave the consequences for someone else. By slowing down, by looking at the ground, by filling the bowl, by saving the bug, and by planting the seed, you are fundamentally rejecting that narrative. You are declaring that your primary function on this earth is not to consume, but to contribute. You do not need a megaphone to be an activist. You do not need a platform to be a guardian. The quietest acts of care reverberate through the ecosystem with just as much power as the loudest protests. The next time you feel the panic setting in, the next time the voice in your head tells you that you are not doing enough, I want you to walk away from the screens. I want you to leave the metrics, the goals, and the impossible expectations in another room. Go find an animal that needs feeding. Go find a plant that needs watering. Go step outside into the gritty, raw air, look closely at the dirt, and see if there is a tiny life that needs your intervention. Engage in the geometry of the rescue. Become the colossus of empathy for something impossibly small. You will find that when you focus entirely on the survival of another living thing, the crippling anxiety about your own purpose silently, miraculously vanishes. You are no longer searching for a reason to exist. You are simply too busy keeping the world alive. Find one living thing to nurture. Fill a dog's water bowl, offer a piece of fresh hay to a rabbit, step over an insect on the pavement, or water a single potted plant. Engage in the geometry of the rescue. Part 3. The symphony of sensation. We are taught that the physical joys of the world are simply rewards meant to be unlocked by hard labor. A hot shower, a cold glass of water, the heavy vibration of a bass line, or the unapologetic heat of the afternoon sun. These are framed as temporary escapes from the real work of living. Chapter 5. The sacred ordinary, the reversal of the reward. There is a fundamental lie at the core of the high-pressure world, a subtle but devastating trick played on our psychology regarding how we experience pleasure. From the time we enter the workforce, and often long before that in our education, we are taught the concept of the reward. The narrative dictates that the primary function of human existence is labor, production, and achievement. The sensory experiences of life, enjoying a delicious meal, feeling the warmth of the afternoon sun, taking a long, hot shower, or listening to music, are framed strictly as secondary bonuses. They are the perks of living. They are the carrots dangled at the end of a long stick of productivity. You are allowed to enjoy a cold beer or a beautiful sunset only if you have put in a hard day's work. You must earn your rest, and you must earn your pleasure. When we accept this framework, we inevitably relegate the physical reality of our bodies to the background. Life becomes a relentless pursuit of abstract concepts, promotions, bank balances, social status, and legacy. The actual tactile experience of being a biological organism on a spinning rock is treated as a temporary distraction from the real work of building an empire. But what happens when life turns into an absolute wreck? What happens when the plans fall apart, the career stalls, the health fails, or the sheer weight of survival makes achievement impossible? If sensory experiences are only rewards for productivity, then a period of unproductivity means you are no longer entitled to the world's beauty. You are locked out of the feast. You are left sitting in the wreckage, believing you have lost your purpose, simply because society says you haven't paid the entry fee for joy. It is time to execute a radical, unapologetic reversal of this philosophy. We must tear down the concept of the reward. Enjoying a glass of cold water, feeling the sun on your skin, tasting salt and sugar, and watching the stars are not the perks of a life well lived. They are not the bonuses you get for completing your to-do list. They are the main event. They are the point of life. You do not work so that you can occasionally allow yourself to look at the sky. You look at the sky because you are a creature of the earth, and navigating the complexities of human society is simply what you occasionally have to do to facilitate that viewing. The sacred ordinary is not a break from your purpose. It is the physical manifestation of it. The alchemy of the elements. To reclaim the sacred ordinary, we must reconnect with the raw, unfiltered grit of physical sensation. In a digitized, sanitized world, it is easy to become entirely disconnected from our own nerve endings. We spend hours staring at flat screens, absorbing abstract information, completely alienated from the tangible environment. But true grounding, True purpose is visceral. It is found in the physical shock of the elements. Consider the profound, ancient alchemy of drinking cold water. When you are deeply exhausted, when your mind is racing with anxieties about the future and regrets about the past, your brain is living in a fictional, conceptual space. But your body is living in the present tense. Imagine the feeling of genuine physical exertion. Imagine the dirt in your teeth and the sweat on your brow after tearing across an open dirt track, the vibration of a roaring engine still buzzing in your bones, the harsh wind having battered you for hours. Or imagine the deep, aching fatigue of simply surviving a day that felt like an emotional battlefield. When you stop, when you finally take off the helmet or drop the heavy armor of your daily persona, and you pour a glass of ice-cold water, pay attention to the collision of elements. As the water hits the back of your throat, there is a biological mandate that supersedes all human anxiety. You can feel the temperature difference. Tracing a line down your esophagus, it is a shock to the system. It washes away the dust of the day. In that exact, fleeting second, you are not a worker, you are not an activist, you are not a debtor, and you are not a failure. You are a biological organism engaging in the most vital chemical transaction on the planet. That sensation is not a trivial detail of your day. It is a moment of pure, unadulterated success. You have successfully identified a fundamental biological need and met it. The profound satisfaction of quenching a deep thirst is a biological applause. It is the universe reminding you that despite the chaos, the mechanics of life are still functioning perfectly. Healing beyond the glare. Just as water grounds us from the inside, the sun grounds us from the outside. But the high-pressure world has corrupted our relationship with the daylight, turning it into a ticking clock. The sun rises, and it signals that the race has begun. The sun sets, and it signals that time has run out. We curse the daylight when we are behind schedule, and we hide from it in climate-controlled offices. To find meaning in the ordinary, we must strip the sun of its association with the workday. We must look at it as the raw, colossal furnace that it is. The sun is entirely uncompromising, and in its harshness, there is a profound, liberating equality. When you step out of your door and into the glaring heat of the afternoon, the sun does not ask for your credentials. It does not care if you spent the morning writing a brilliant manifesto or if you spent it staring at a crack in the ceiling, completely paralyzed by depression. The heat radiating against your skin, warming the leather of your jacket or burning through the fabric of your shirt, is an act of universal grace. It is healing beyond the judgment of a society that demands perfection. There is a gritty, unapologetic reality to feeling the sun bake the earth beneath your boots. It reminds you that you are part of a massive, ancient, and entirely unsanitized natural order. When you stand still and simply let the heat sink into your muscles, you are receiving energy from a star located 93 million miles away. Why do we constantly search for profound, metaphysical meaning when we are literally standing in the beam of a cosmic reactor? When the world demands that you justify your existence through labor, step outside. Stand in the unforgiving, generous glare of the daytime star. Let it warm your skin. Let it remind you that you are a physical entity occupying physical space. The mere act of casting a shadow on the pavement is proof of your undeniable, heavy reality. You are here. You are anchored. You are absorbing the heat. That is enough. The vibration of existence. When the self-help industry talks about finding peace and purpose in the ordinary, it almost exclusively relies on imagery of extreme tranquility. It paints pictures of silent monasteries, still lakes, and whisper-quiet meditation rooms. It pushes a narrative that to be truly grounded, one must be perfectly serene, speaking in hushed tones, entirely divorced from the friction of the world. But human existence is not always quiet, and purpose does not only exist in the silence. For many, attempting to force themselves into a mold of pristine, delicate serenity is just another form of high-pressure failure. What about the heavy, chaotic, and loud moments? What about the days when life is a relentless, aggressive storm? There is a sacred ordinary to be found in the noise, the grit, and the rebellion. Sometimes, the most profound sensory anchor you can find is not the chirp of a bird, but the visceral, chest-rattling punch of a heavy bass line. When you feel entirely disconnected, when the societal expectations are suffocating you, there is an immense, liberating purpose in surrendering to the sheer volume of a heavy metal riff. The distortion, the screaming guitars, the rapid-fire assault of a drum kit, these are not just sounds. They are physical vibrations. They shake your ribcage. They demand that your nervous system wake up and pay attention. In a world that constantly tells you to quiet down, to make yourself smaller, and to fit neatly into a corporate box, turning up the volume until your floorboards rattle is an act of radical self-assertion. It is the sonic equivalent of planting your feet in the dirt and refusing to be moved. We can find this same mechanical, vibrating purpose in the roar of a motorcycle engine, the heavy thud of hooves hitting the dirt, or the cracking thunder of a violent summer storm. These loud, uncompromising realities remind us that the natural world, and our own human nature, is not always polite. It is often raw, gritty, and fiercely unapologetic. You do not have to be a serene, peaceful monk to have a valid purpose. You can be a rock-solid force of nature. You can be loud. You can find your spiritual center in the middle of a mosh pit or tearing down a dusty highway, surrounded by the mechanical roar of combustion. The vibration is proof of life. When you feel the music or the engine rattling your teeth, you are acutely, undeniably alive. And being alive, in all its chaotic, noisy glory, is the ultimate objective. Laughing through the wreckage of a terrible day to the soundtrack of aggressive, unrelenting music is not a failure of mindfulness. It is a masterclass in survival. It is finding the silver lining in the heaviest of clouds. The feast of the present, if water is the great reset, the sun is the great equalizer, and sound is the great awakener, then food is the great tether. In the hyper-optimized modern era, food has been stripped of its sacredness. We have reduced it to fuel. We drink meal replacement shakes so we don't have to pause our workflow. We eat at our desks, staring at spreadsheets, completely unaware of the textures and flavors passing over our tongues. We have turned eating into just another biological chore that must be completed as efficiently as possible to maintain our productivity. But to eat is to consume the earth. Every piece of food is a direct translation of soil, water, and sunlight into human tissue. When we slow down and actually experience the act of eating, we are engaging in a profound communion with the environment. The sharp, acidic bite of a lemon, the rich, heavy warmth of a bowl of stew, the crisp, structural collapse of a fresh apple between your teeth, these are miracles of sensory design. The purpose of an apple is not just to provide you with a specific ratio of carbohydrates and vitamins so you can return to your spreadsheet. The purpose of an apple is to be tasted. Its crispness, its sweetness, the specific sound it makes when you bite into it, that entire experience is the culmination of months of rain, sun, and cellular growth. When you sit down to eat and you strip away the distractions, the screens, and the anxieties of the day, you are honoring the harvest. Even if it is a simple, inexpensive meal, the act of tasting it fully is an act of deep reverence. You are bearing witness to the flavor of the world. If your day has been a complete disaster, if you feel like you have failed at every macro-level task you attempted, but you managed to sit down and truly, deeply enjoy the taste of a single, well-cooked meal, the day was not a waste. You participated in the sensory feast of existence. You found a silver lining on a plate. You anchored yourself in the present tense, and you survived. The starlight perspective finally, when the loud, chaotic, glaring day is done, the earth turns its back to the sun, and we are presented with the ultimate reminder of the sacred ordinary. The high-pressure world is built entirely on human constructs. Deadlines, credit scores, stock markets, social media algorithms, fashion trends, and corporate hierarchies. None of these things actually exist in the natural universe. They are collective hallucinations. They are games we invented, and yet we allow them to drive us to the brink of madness. When the weight of these imaginary constructs feels like it is crushing the breath out of your lungs, you must seek the perspective of the night. Step outside, away from the artificial glow of streetlights and screens. If you can, find a place where the horizon is wide open, a quiet road, a stretch of farm dirt, or a dark backyard. Look up. The night sky is the ultimate antidote to human ego. When you stare into the vast, glittering expanse of a clear, unpolluted sky, you are looking at billions of massive, burning nuclear furnaces scattered across unimaginable distances. You are looking at the raw, untamed, heavy metal reality of the cosmos. The stars do not care about your to-do list. The Milky Way does not care about your career trajectory. The sheer scale of the universe makes a mockery of our societal anxieties. This realization is not meant to make you feel small or insignificant. Quite the opposite. It is meant to set you free. When you realize how utterly meaningless our modern, capitalist stresses are to the wider universe, the chains fall off. You are suddenly free to simply be a human being standing on the dirt, breathing the cool night air, and bearing witness to the majesty of the infinite. Looking at the stars is not a waste of time. It is not an idle luxury. It is the fundamental privilege of consciousness. We are the universe waking up and looking back at itself. When you stand in the dark, feeling the cold air in your lungs, and you tilt your head back to track the slow, silent arc of a shooting star, you are fulfilling the highest possible purpose of a living organism. You are being a witness to the profound beauty of reality. The main event, the high-pressure world, will constantly try to drag you back into the illusion. It will tell you that you are falling behind. It will tell you that your life is a mess, that your resume is lacking, and that you have not done enough to justify the space you take up. When those voices get loud, you must aggressively anchor yourself to the physical truth. You must remember the shock of the cold water. You must remember the unapologetic heat of the sun on your back. You must remember the bone-rattling vibration of loud music, the crunch of an apple, and the staggering, silent vastness of the stars. These things are not the background noise of your life. They are the substance of it. They are not the rewards for a successful existence. They are the definition of one. You do not need to build a monument to prove you were here. The earth already knows you are here. It feels your footsteps in the grit. It feels your breath in the air. It warms your skin and quenches your thirst. By simply choosing to fully experience the sensation of being alive, you defeat the narrative of inadequacy. You step out of the high-stakes game of societal achievement and step into the profound, unshakable reality of the sacred ordinary. When life turns into a wreck, you do not have to fix everything immediately. You only have to find one sensory anchor. Drink the water, feel the sun, turn up the music, look at the sky. You are a temporary, miraculous collection of stardust, experiencing the universe through 5 incredible senses. Let the world rush by. Let the societal expectations burn down. Stand in the wreckage, feel the dirt under your feet, and savor the absolute, defiant privilege of being alive. Pour a glass of ice-cold water. Drink it. Focus entirely on the physical shock of the temperature hitting the back of your throat. You are a biological organism quenching a thirst, and right now, nothing else matters. Chapter 6. Walking as a witness, the erased journey. We have developed a profound cultural hostility toward distance. In the modern, hyper-optimized world, the physical space between where we are and where we want to be is treated almost exclusively as an enemy. It is a nuisance to be eliminated, a hurdle to be vaulted over as quickly as humanly or mechanically possible. Look at the language we use regarding travel. We want to bypass traffic, skip the commute, and find the shortcut. We bury our faces in glowing screens while riding trains. We listen to podcasts on double speed while driving, and we construct complex logistical routines designed to minimize the time we spend simply moving from point A to point B. The journey is an inconvenience. The destination is the only thing that holds value. This mindset is perfectly aligned with the grand calling and the high-pressure economy. If your only purpose is to achieve, to arrive, and to produce, then the in-between spaces are completely devoid of worth. They are dead zones. But when we erase the journey, we inadvertently erase the world. We reduce our entire physical reality to a series of disconnected rooms: our bedroom, our car, our office, the grocery store. The vast, breathing, incredibly complex environment that exists between those rooms is entirely ignored. This chapter is about reclaiming the in-between. It is about stepping off the treadmill of constant arrival and embracing the profound, quiet purpose of simply moving through a space without the demand of conquering it. It is about stepping out your front door not to go somewhere, but to be somewhere. We are going to explore the sacred act of walking as a witness. The gear shift of perception there is an undeniable, electric thrill in speed. For those who grew up in the rugged expanse of the outdoors, who know the mechanical surge of an engine tearing up a dirt track, or the heavy, rhythmic, earth-shaking thud of a horse at a full gallop, speed is a visceral reminder of life. High-energy movement has its place. It requires intense focus, a physical blending of human and machine or human and animal, where instinct takes over and the wind tears away the trivial anxieties of the day. It is an exertion of will against the landscape. But when the dust settles, the engine is cut, and the saddle is put away, a different kind of movement is required. To witness the world, you must completely shift the gears of your perception. You must downshift into a pace that allows for observation rather than domination. When you move at 100 kilometers an hour, the world is a blur, a background painting that exists only to test your reflexes. When you slow down to a walking pace, the blur shatters into a million intricate, fascinating fragments of reality. Walking is the speed at which the human brain was designed to process the environment. It is the pace of our ancestors, the tempo of the gatherer, the rhythm of the nomad. When you walk, you are no longer flying over the ecosystem, you are wading through it. You are subjected to its microclimates, its sudden shifts in terrain, and its hidden details. Walking without a destination is a direct rebellion against the productivity mandate. The high-pressure world demands an itinerary. Where are you going? What is your step count? Are you burning calories? Are you listening to an educational audiobook? To walk as a witness is to leave the pedometer and the headphones at home. It is to step out onto the pavement, the gravel, or the soil with absolutely nothing to accomplish. Your hands are empty. Your agenda is blank. You are not a worker on a break. You are an audience member taking your seat in the theater of the real world. Healing beyond judgment, what does it actually mean to be a witness? In legal terms, a witness is someone who sees an event take place and recounts it truthfully. They are not the judge, they are not the jury, and they are not the executioner. Their sole responsibility is to perceive and acknowledge reality exactly as it occurred, without altering the facts to suit a narrative. In ecological and spiritual terms, being a gentle observer of your environment requires the exact same discipline. It requires the profound, difficult practice of looking at the world around you and healing beyond judgment. We are conditioned to instantly appraise everything we see. We walk down a street, and our minds immediately begin sorting the environment into categories of good and bad, beautiful and ugly, valuable and worthless. We look at a manicured lawn and deem it successful. We look at a cracked sidewalk with weeds pushing through the concrete and deem it a failure of infrastructure. We look at a rusted, sagging barbed wire fence and see poverty or neglect. But a witness does not appraise. A witness simply observes. When you strip away the harsh, critical lens of societal expectations, the aesthetic of the world changes. The pristine and the polished lose their monopoly on beauty. You begin to find a deep, resonant truth in the raw and the unrefined. You start to appreciate the gritty, neo-grunge reality of the physical world. That rusted wire fence is not a failure. It is a testament to the slow, inevitable oxidation of metal, a chemical reality painted in streaks of brilliant orange and brown. The weed breaking through the concrete is not a nuisance. It is a staggering display of biological defiance, a tiny green fist punching through human engineering to reach the sun. The dilapidated, weather-beaten wood of an old barn is not an eyesore. It is a historical record of 1,000 rainstorms and 1,000 scorching afternoons. When you learn to walk through your environment without judging it, you are granting the world the permission to exist exactly as it is. You are not demanding that the landscape perform for you. You are not demanding that it be neat, orderly, or profitable. And here is the beautiful secret of this practice. When you learn to heal beyond judgment in how you view the external world, you subconsciously begin to apply that exact same grace to yourself. When you stop demanding perfection from the dirt, the trees, and the architecture, you stop demanding it from your own reflection. You realize that your own scars, your own exhaustion, and your own rusted, weathered edges are not failures. They are simply the physical evidence that you have lived, weathered the storms, and remained standing. The architecture of the unnoticed, the purpose of the witness, is to acknowledge the architecture of the unnoticed. The high-pressure world only looks at the monuments. It only looks at the skyscrapers, the billboards, and the grand vistas. But the ecosystem thrives in the margins. Take a walk down a perfectly ordinary street, a street you have driven down 100 times before. But this time, look at it with the explicit intention of finding the invisible details. Look at the patterns the water leaves in the dirt after a heavy rain. Look at the way a stray cat navigates the shadows of an alleyway, moving with a fluid, ancient grace that completely ignores the property lines drawn by humans. Look at the complex, mathematical geometry of a spider web strung between two side-view mirrors on a parked car, glittering with morning dew. These microrealities are happening continuously, billions of times a day, all over the planet. And for the most part, they happen entirely unobserved. They are a silent symphony playing to an empty auditorium. When you pause your life to look at that spider web, you change the nature of its existence. In that brief moment, the spider web is no longer just a random collision of silk and moisture. It becomes a piece of recognized art. Your gaze validates it. We often wonder what our purpose is, searching for grand answers in philosophy and religion. But what if part of your fundamental purpose is simply to be the conscious eye of the universe? What if the cosmos, in all its chaotic, rugged glory, created human consciousness, specifically so that there would be someone capable of witnessing its handiwork? If a tree falls in a forest and no one is around to hear it, does it make a sound? The philosophical debate is endless. But if a sunset paints the sky in violent shades of bruised purple and burning gold, and every single human being is inside staring at a spreadsheet, the sunset is entirely wasted. You are the audience. It is a profound, vital responsibility to simply show up and pay attention. Silver linings in the wreckage, let us address the difficult reality of observing a world that is not always beautiful, even in its rawest forms. Walking as a witness does not mean donning rose-colored glasses. It does not mean engaging in toxic positivity or pretending that destruction, decay, and suffering do not exist. Sometimes, the environment you must walk through is deeply broken. You might be walking through a neighborhood hollowed out by economic depression. You might be walking through a landscape scarred by a recent bushfire, where the earth is black and the air smells like ash. Or, metaphorically, you might be walking through the immediate aftermath of a personal tragedy. You might be navigating a season where your plans have collapsed, your heart is broken, and your daily reality feels like an absolute, unmitigated shit show. How do we walk as a witness through the wreckage? We do it by refusing to look away, and by refusing to let the destruction be the only narrative. When life turns into a shit show, the high-pressure world tells you to immediately start rebuilding. It hands you a broom and tells you to sweep up the mess, hide the debris, and put on a brave face. It demands that you fix the landscape before you are allowed to exist in it. But the gentle observer knows that you cannot rebuild until you have honestly surveyed the ruins. Walking through the wreckage requires immense courage. It means looking at the broken pieces of a relationship, a career, or a community, and sitting with the heavy, uncomfortable truth of the loss. But because you have trained yourself to look for the architecture of the unnoticed, your eyes will naturally begin to seek out the contrast. You will see the green shoot of a fern pushing up through the blackened, charred soil of the fire ground. You will see a moment of unprompted, genuine laughter between two people sitting on a cracked curb in a struggling neighborhood. You will find that even in the absolute center of a disaster, the mechanics of life are still fighting for purchase. These are the silver linings. They are not platitudes. They are not empty reassurances that everything happens for a reason. They are hard, empirical facts. They are the defiant, gritty proof that destruction is never absolute. When you learn to witness the wreckage without being consumed by it, you discover a deeply resilient form of purpose. You become the historian of the silver lining. You are the one who documents the resilience of the earth and the human spirit. You can laugh through the wreckage not because the wreckage is funny, but because you recognize that the human capacity for joy cannot be entirely extinguished by circumstance. The physicality of the stroll, we must not intellectualize the act of walking so much that we forget the physical reality of it. Being a witness is not just an exercise for the eyes. It is a full-body engagement with the ecosystem. When you walk, pay attention to the literal, physical connection between your body and the planet. Notice the way gravity holds you to the dirt. Notice the slight adjustments your ankles and knees make as the terrain shifts from pavement to gravel to grass. You are a bipedal organism, executing a deeply complex biomechanical process that took millions of years of evolution to perfect, just so you could carry your eyes across the landscape. Let the environment interact with you. Let the wind dictate the temperature of your skin. If it starts to rain, do not immediately run for cover in a panic. Let the water hit your face. Notice how the smell of the air changes when the rain hits the dry dirt. a sharp, rich scent called petrichor that is biologically hardwired into our brains as a signal of life and renewal. When you allow the environment to touch you, you dissolve the artificial barrier between you and the outside. You remember that you are not an alien dropped onto a hostile planet. You are a native species walking through your own living room. This physical presence is the ultimate antidote to anxiety. Anxiety lives in the future. It lives in the what-ifs, the pending deadlines, and the imagined catastrophes. But your physical body cannot exist in the future. Your feet can only touch the ground right now. Your nose can only smell the rain right now. By focusing entirely on the physical act of walking and observing, you drag your mind out of the fictional future and anchor it violently, beautifully in the present tense. The fellowship of the observer. As you practice this gentle observation, you will inevitably encounter others doing the exact same thing. You will pass an elderly man sitting on a park bench, just watching the pigeons. You will see a child squatting on the sidewalk, entirely captivated by the march of an ant colony. You will make eye contact with someone leaning against a brick wall, drinking a coffee, just watching the traffic flow by. In the high-pressure world, these people are classified as loitering or killing time. They are seen as non-productive elements of the economy. But in the ecosystem of purpose, these are your peers. This is the fellowship of the observer. There is a silent, profound solidarity among those who have stepped off the treadmill to witness the world. When you nod at that person on the bench, you are acknowledging a shared understanding. You both know that the urgent rushing of the crowd around you is an illusion. You both know that the true substance of life is found in the quiet, unhurried observation of the present moment. You do not need to speak to them to share this connection. The act of witnessing is a universal language. It transcends culture, creed, and circumstance. It is the shared humanity of opening your eyes and admitting, I am here. The world is here. Let us look at each other. Returning with evidence, a walk must eventually come to an end. You will circle back to your front door, turn the handle, and return to the demands of your life. The bills will still be there. The societal expectations will still be humming in the background. The emails will still require answers. But you will not be returning empty-handed. When you walk as a witness, you gather evidence. You collect microscopic proofs of your own validity and the validity of the world. You bring back the memory of the rusted fence, the defiance of the weed, the resilience of the fireground, and the geometry of the spiderweb. This evidence is your armor against the grand calling. The next time the high-pressure world tries to tell you that your life is lacking purpose because you haven't achieved a macro-level goal, you can mentally review the evidence you gathered on your walk. You can remind yourself that you played your part. You were the audience for the setting sun. You were the witness to the silver lining. You allowed the environment to exist without judgment, and you allowed yourself to exist within it. You do not need to write a book about what you saw, or paint a picture, or monetize your observations. The act of witnessing is complete in and of itself. The purpose was fulfilled the exact second your eyes registered the beauty of the raw, unpolished world. To get out of bed when there is nothing else to do is an act of defiance. To step outside and slowly, deliberately walk through the environment is an act of reclamation. You are taking back your time, your attention, and your inherent worth. So let the engines cool down. Let the screens go dark. Put on your boots, open the door, and step out into the gritty, magnificent reality of your ecosystem. The world is putting on a spectacular, heartbreaking, beautiful show, and it has been waiting for you to take your seat. Walk slowly. Look closely. The meaning you are looking for is right there on the pavement. Step outside or look through a window. Find one gritty, unpolished detail, a weed pushing through the concrete, a rusted fence, or a cracked pavement, and simply observe it. Let it exist without judgment. Part 4. Universal belonging. This part of the book flips this toxic script entirely. The sensory experience of the world is not the reward. It is the main event. When life turns into an absolute wreck and the blueprints of your future collapse, the abstract demands of society offer zero comfort. In these moments, survival requires us to anchor ourselves aggressively to the physical, tactile world. This section is about reclaiming the sacred ordinary. It is about allowing the raw, sometimes loud, and entirely unsanitized elements of the earth to shock your nervous system back into the present tense. We will explore the liberating art of walking as a witness. moving through your environment without the heavy burden of judgment, simply acknowledging the gritty architecture of the unnoticed world. Here, you will learn to stop demanding perfection from your surroundings and yourself, and instead, learn how to find the silver linings in the wreckage.